David Dunn is Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham. Great to have you on the programme again. So what do you think the potential is of these talks in Washington being more consequential than the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska?
Well, I think you have to see them as part of the same process. What we had in Alaska was the Russians trying to reframe the conflict in Ukraine as an irritant and an obstacle to better relations between Russia and the United States. Putin talked about the possibility of collaboration in space technology, digital technology, and cooperation in the Arctic as a way of saying all these things are possible if we can get behind the difficulty of solving the Ukrainian problem. What the Europeans are saying is that actually that's the wrong way to look at it, and what they're there to do is to say that the problem here is Russia in its illegal aggression, occupation of 20% of a sovereign state on its borders, and that Russia represents a threat to European security and the rule of law. And that's the way to think about these things, not as some nostalgic idea that there can be great cooperation between Russia and the United States, because despite the way in which Vladimir Putin portrayed it, Russia is a defunct economy, a failing, declining regional power that's only propped up by China and India buying its oil.
So how far do you think Trump's thinking has changed? I mean, that's presumably why many of these European leaders are accompanying Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Yeah, so what we had is we have an evolution of Trump's thinking over 6 months, whereby 6 months ago he was berating Zelenskyy as the problem, and over that 6 months he's realised that the Russians have not been serious about a ceasefire, have not been serious about ending the conflict, and have been even more expansive in their unreasonable demands for the subjugation of Ukraine to Russia's will and the recreation of the Soviet Union. And he, a week ago, got to the position whereby he was threatening them with tariffs if they didn't agree to immediate ceasefire. By virtue of being better prepared and more skillful in their statecraft, the Russians seems to reverse that, and Trump seems to have changed his mind. So what we have now is the Europeans trying to be the last person in the room that seems to be affecting the way in which Donald Trump works, in order to actually try and change his mind back again. So what we have is Zelenskyy being flanked by a bodyguard of serious Europeans, able to try and influence the way in which the debate in Washington goes from the vacillating Mr. Trump.
But let's look at what is presumably on the table at the moment. I mean, what will handing the Donbass region to Russia mean for Ukraine? And what would it mean if Zelenskyy says no to what Trump is proposing?
So Russia is maximalist in its demand. It wants the so-called denazification, de-democratization and pacification and demilitarization of the sovereign country that is Ukraine. Having illegally occupied 20% of it, it's now demanding the parts of it which it claims legally as to have annexed, but yet has failed to achieve militarily. The idea that the Ukrainians would give that up is not going to happen, because to do so would be to give away their defensive lines and open up the country to the possibility of Russia could invade and conquer the whole country, including the capital Kyiv. So what you have instead is that the Ukrainians saying this is unacceptable, and we're not going to agree to that, and the Europeans are buttressing him and trying to make the Trump administration appreciate that this is an unreasonable as well as an illegal demand. And as a consequence of that, you may have an impasse whereby the Trump administration wants to put pressure on Ukraine to end the war, even on these egregious terms, and that is potentially what's at stake in Washington this week.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Such a shame. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham.